What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel for another video. Here we're taking a look at Spider-Man 2, which is finally on PC, running on the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus. Now, I already have my Steam Deck video up, and I'm working on videos for the other handhelds as well, and the game's pretty playable on everything. However, it does kind of take low and medium to do it, and on the Claw 30 watts because we don't have an option between 17 and 30, but we're going to take a closer look at that. The game also has some pretty good in-game frame generation, which makes it a bit more playable in my opinion, and we'll take a look at that too. We'll also see 1200p and 800p here at 17 and 30 watts, but again, 30 watts for this device until we have something between that. And the harder to run games like this, it just kind of is what it is, and it really runs better that way. But yeah, our other options here, like I said, we do have in-game frame generation, XeSS. Since we're on Intel Arc, it does work a little better than FSR, and it definitely looks better. And balanced works well for 1200p as well. Graphics, we have preset options of very low, low, medium, high, and very high. But again, as I've played more and more of this game and put a couple more hours in, doing anything but low or medium does get pretty rough on any of the handhelds, including this one. And you can go very low and get even more FPS, but it looks pretty rough. So something between that low and medium seems to work pretty well. Now, looking at XeSS balanced, again for 1200p works well. If you go to something like performance, it does take a bit too much pressure off the GPU. It's a CPU heavy game and frame times get a little bit off that way. So that's kind of as far as I wanted to go with 1200p. Even at 30 watts, it kind of works best that way, but adjust that how you want. But you definitely need some of that upscaling if you're going to do 1200p for this display. We also do, of course, have that AMD frame generation here, and this works really well in this game, and on all the handhelds, I think it's actually really helpful, making it playable, especially if you can have a base frame rate high enough of, say, 30 to 60 or 40 to 60 and not dropping too much. It works pretty well. Now, as far as those graphics options, again, I'll go through these. Very low here, about 51, switch over to low, 47, 45. These are going to go around and bounce all over the place. The thing is, if you get above low, medium into the high, very high, the game just, when you're moving around the city or trying to do anything else, it becomes a bit of a mess. So adjust things how you want, but I really think between that low and medium is what works out best here, whether you're 1200p or 800p. And 17 watts, again, even though we've been sitting here at that, it doesn't work well when you get into gameplay, as we'll take a look at. I'm going to switch this over to the 30 watts. I wish they'd give us a 22 or a 25. That'd be a real sweet spot, because the Z1 Extremes are running this game pretty well at 22 to 25, but they don't do well under 20, so it makes sense why 17 watts has trouble here. Now we can also turn on that frame generation here at the 30 watts, and VSync is on, and it's really smooth. Again, it does add a little bit of input latency. It is frame generation. I know some people don't want to use it, and that's fine, but it's been implemented well into this game, and I've tried it on all of the different handhelds, from this one to the Legion Go, the Ally X, the Steam Deck even, and it works really well and feels good on these devices. And because it is hard to run when you're moving around the city and everything, I really recommend giving it a shot, and we'll look at more of that as we go throughout the video, but we'll also turn it off and look at some non-frame gen as well. But yeah, we'll get into a little combat here real quick. On the rooftop, things stay nice and smooth. Again, input latency isn't really added that much, and for single player campaign games, I can really deal with this a lot more than, say, like, a competitive multiplayer. I wouldn't want frame gen on anything competitive, but for single player story stuff like this, where it's not even that noticeable, I think it's pretty good. Now, taking a quick look at that 17 watts, again, when you're moving around the city, and we're still on low here, it can get a little bit rough, and you can drop below 30 FPS. Now, it can still get a little rough on 30 watts too, which we'll take a look at, but it doesn't get as bad. So just another thing to mention, I've mentioned it a few times, I don't think we can get away with going quite that low in this game on the Claw. But switching it over to 30 watts though, yeah, it's not perfect, but we maintain a much higher FPS at the same settings, and the frame times and frame pacing doesn't quite get near as bad as it does with 17 watts. Actually, it's pretty much the same on my Z1 Extreme at 25 to 30 watts, the same kind of performance moving around the city, which you'll see in later videos that I'll be throwing out for that too. But yeah, frame gen off here, moving around the city, things are pretty good. We're going to go ahead and kick frame gen on here so you can see the difference. There you go, at 30 watts, and I'm telling you, it smoothed things out really nicely. And when you have a decent base FPS of 40 or above, especially a lot of the times, it looks good and feels good here on the Claw, especially in person on the VRR display. I think it works out well. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers 1200p. Again, there's room to play. There's plenty of things to match your preference of how you want this game to run, especially if you're someone that just wants to turn off frame gen and really try to lock things down to like a 30 or 40 FPS experience. You can work on that too. But let's get away from the upscaling and all that, and let's go to 800p on this 1610 1200p display, because it actually looks really good on the claw. So 800p here, and we're going to turn off frame gen for now, and we're going to turn off all the upscaling here, and we're just going to let it use anti-aliasing TAA for now on the game. And there you go. We're going to get about the same performance that we would get over on the 1200p with all of the upscaling and whatnot, but it's a 800p native. And so you get a little bit less of the artifacting, ghosting, and issues that you can get, even though XeSS does well when you're doing that. So some people might very much prefer the 800p native with these settings and performance versus the 1200p upscaled. Because if you try to do 1200p without any upscaling, it does get too much of a mess, which you could probably figure out from watching the 1200p footage in the video. But yeah, this actually looks and feels great. We're not using frame gen there or anything. I turned frame gen on for this spot because there was a lot more going on and I wanted to try it out. And yeah, it was good here in combat as well at 800p native low, and even input latency felt fine. So for me, it was good here. Again, single player campaign. Looked great, felt great with frame gen on here, 800p native. So this is another great way, another great option to be able to play the game. Now moving around the city, you might still get some of those janky moments in the frame times and frame pacing, but as you can see, for the most part, especially with frame gen on, it stays really clean at 800p native moving around, even at medium that we're on here. Now if we turn frame gen off, it still has some issues. You'll see your base frame rate here as you move around the city, but again, it doesn't always stay that way. This is only when you're really moving quickly around the city, and it doesn't make the game unplayable in any way. As soon as you're back on the ground fighting or in another mission or in a building or doing anything else, it smooths right back out and feels great in the gameplay. So it's not perfect, and maybe there's some patching and things that can be done because it's not just this device. Moving around the city, even on my desktop PCs, does seem to bring on some stutter and frame pacing issues and all of that. So I don't think it's just the devices. I think maybe a little bit with the game too, which mostly all goes away when you turn on frame gen. So I find that kind of interesting with this one as well. But yeah, on the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus, I think you get the point. It's very playable here, but you are going to want to go 30 watts. Adjust the settings to your liking, 1200p upscaled or 800p native, and have a good time with Spider-Man 2 here on the Claw or whatever other device you might be checking out. Alright guys, as always, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.